There we go. Sorry about that. All right, let me share my screen again.
And your slides will be available anyway afterwards, right?
Yes, we'll post the slides on the website.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next thing we looked at was crash data. At the time, we analyzed the most recent available crash data. So that was 2016 through 2020. The figure on your right is a heat map. So the areas that have the more yellowish color, there's more crashes that occurred at those intersections. Within the study area, there were 158 total crashes. 88% of crashes occurred in clear weather conditions. 72% of crashes occurred in daylight conditions. And out of the 158 crashes, 52 of them were injury crashes. There were no fatalities, and then 106 of them were property damage crashes. So this slide summarizes the 9 thresholds from the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program Policy Manual. So 1 or more of these thresholds must meet in order to implement traffic calming measures. So based on those criteria, Washington, Constitution, and Avenida del Sol met for traffic calming measures. So when we went to public meeting number 1, we had a 2-week comment period. During that comment period, we received 48 emails from individual commenters. So majority of the commenters were for traffic circles, bulb outs only if they don't affect bike lanes. They were for pedestrian crossings and speed humps. The most opposed, we did have an alternative that showed a one-way on Avenida del Sol. Most folks were opposed by that, and so we did eliminate it from moving forward. We received a lot of additional requests to include Solano to the study, so we did include that to the study. And then we did receive numerous requests about adding multi-way stops at intersections. So with multi-way stops, warrants need to be met for them. It's based on federal requirements. Placing multi-way stops at intersections that are not warranted, what tends to happen is people start ignoring the stop signs because there's not a lot of traffic stopping in the opposing direction. So with multi-way stops, we don't want to place them in areas where they're not warranted. So now I'm going to go through the proposed alternatives. The first one is Constitution and Washington. What we have shown is improving the striping and then adding a bulb out to the southwest corner. So this bulb out has a few pros associated with it. We did get a lot of feedback that this wall in the southwest corner has been hit multiple times. And so this bulb out will provide some additional protection, additional distance from that wall. A bulb out also provides the crossing distances for pedestrians to be shorter, so they're not within the roadway for as long of a time without one. We do have some bike ramps on there, so the bicyclists can exit the lane from the bike ramp and then get back on. The other benefit of having this bulb out is it moves up the stop bar on this northbound approach, so it'll help with sight distance as well. The next intersection is Washington and Hannett. So this one, we have two mid-block crossings, one on the north end of the intersection and one on the south end. With the mid-block crossing on the south end, we're proposing another bulb out, also with the bike ramp. Again, the bulb outs provide shorter crossing distances for pedestrians. And then we are also proposing a bulb out on this northeast corner. So this northeast corner, it'll help vehicles traveling westbound intersect at Washington at more of a 90-degree angle. So they won't be coming in at a skewed angle. And then with this, we can also improve some of the striping, continuing the bike lane on the north side. The next intersection is Constitution and Morningside. So we have the two mid-block crossings. With the mid-block crossings, we have center islands. So these provide pedestrian refuges. It also helps with traffic calming. We also are proposing a bulb out on the southeast corner. This bulb out will also help with traffic calming, shortening the pedestrian crossing distances. And then the stop sign on the northbound approach for Morningside is set back to the south. So this will help bring it up to more north, which will help with sight distance issues for people who are trying to exit Morningside to get onto Constitution or go across. The next intersection is Mackland and Montclair. We're proposing a elongated traffic circle. So this intersection is in a conventional four-legged intersection. It's skewed. So this will help slow people down entering the intersection. And then it'll also, people will be yielding entering this intersection. And Avenida del Sol, it's not an emergency route and it does meet for traffic calming measures. We're proposing speed humps along the street. Another comment we received is some concerns at the entrances of Hidden Park. So there's vehicles that will park in front of the entrances. So we are proposing some no parking striping at those entrances. So when pedestrians are exiting the sidewalk, they'll have better sight distances of vehicles approaching. So that's all I have for the alternatives. So now we're going to go to public input. There's a different ways that you can ask questions or provide comments. You can provide comments tonight. So there is a hand. If you raise your virtual hand, I can call on you and you can ask a question. Or there is a chat box, and there's also a Q&A box that you can ask questions in there, and I can read them out loud and answer those as well. So if anyone has any questions, I did see there's a few in the chat box. I'll start with those. So the first question is, will you also remove the turning lane on Washington and Hannock? Yes. So let me come back to the figure. So there is a northbound left turn lane on Washington that goes to Hannock. So with the bulb out, we would propose to eliminate this left turn lane. There's also a southbound one as well. So when we did the turning movement counts, the volumes were fairly low, so they didn't warrant turn lanes. Removing these turn lanes will also help with traffic calming, because traffic will have to slow down to wait for people to make the left turns into the roadways. Patrick, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, thanks. First, I just want to say I really like a lot of the traffic calming things around here. As someone who is in this area a lot, I'm really excited to see them. I had a question about the roundabouts. I know there was a roundabout in the South Valley that got some like suspicion or whatever because people were basically whipping around the roundabout, and there was concern that the cars would then just end up crashing into the houses. Is there going to be any sort of like speed calming related to the roundabouts to help prevent those concerns?
So
Or like bollards along the sides?
There'll be yield signs entering the roundabout, so people will slow down to enter them. And then some striping, if there's any stripings that we need on the approaches to help navigate people through it.
Okay.
And then Keenan.
Great, thank you. And it looks like some people to the chat beat me to this comment, but I walk to work. I work at UNM Hospital, and I think the major pedestrian walkway so that you avoid traffic is Macklin Crossing Constitution. And I know Macklin Crossing Carlisle, excuse me, across Carlisle. I know Carlisle wasn't in the study, but that's a major, that I think that's the most risk I take every day is crossing that intersection compared to everything else I do. And so I didn't know if there was any discussion or thoughts about how to make that safer. There was already, for example, an accident day where EMS had to get called out. So anything to make that safer would be greatly appreciated.
Audra, would you like for me to jump in on that one?
Yes, please.
Because that is outside the study area. But before redistricting, Councilor Benton and I did split the cost of that crosswalk and the hawk signal that will be going in there. I know that we went ahead and put the crosswalk in because folks said that they didn't want to wait. But the hawk signal should be going in relatively soon. I know it took a while to get here. There's supply chain issues, all of those things, but I was told in a meeting about 2 weeks ago that it was a priority. So that's outside of this, particular study, but definitely happening.
So Councilor Fibbercorn, could you, I'm sorry, I was late trying to get in. Could someone reiterate what was just said about the Montclair-Macklin intersection?
Yes, so that one, we're proposing a elongated traffic circle at that intersection. So drivers would have to slow down entering the intersection and then make their way around the traffic circle in order to make their turning movements.
So could I make a comment in that I've lived there since 1986, and I'm struggling with how this is a solution to a problem that I can't identify. If people are concerned about the speed, which isn't very often at all, it's mostly when they're working on Carlisle and they reroute people through, then change the stop sign from Resalana-Macklin to Montclair. But as someone who lives on that street and comes in and out of there daily, the elongated traffic circle will make it impossible for me to get to my driveway if I'm coming from the east. And I kind of am stunned that when I look at the data that was presented, there wasn't much data to warrant something as extreme as that elongated traffic circle. Can you enlighten me in the thinking behind this?
So we also looked at this intersection, we looked at sight distances as well. And it's an odd intersection. It's not a conventional four-legged intersection. So this would help. This would help, slow people down entering the intersection, and they would go around the traffic circle.
Which would force someone like me to actually go up the wrong way to be able to get to my driveway. because trying to go round to the north and then back around, back through the west and then back to the north. Right now, the car I have won't make that turn without backing up. And I'm not the only person on that street with that kind of issue. I'm surprised you haven't heard from anyone else. Am I the only one that thinks this is a kind of overkill?
We received a couple comments about, you know, not wanting the traffic circle, but the majority of comments that we did receive, they were for it.
I just think it's going to create bigger problems. It's going to create problems that are not there now, if it's installed, if we move this way. I mean, you will have people like me, and I'm sure that, you know, somebody will call the police, that will have to go up. I'll have to go on the east side of that traffic circle to get into my house, or never come to my home from the east side. And I mean, after having been there for 30 something years, I'm just stunned that people think there's a traffic problem when there were no data that show that.
So, Mackland, I believe.
I mean, if you want to slow people down, move that stop sign that's on Mackland and Resolana to Montclair. And then, because people coming from Carlisle up Mackland stop there, and then they stop again at Morningside. So switch those two stop signs. That's so slow folks down without this sort of elaborate intervention.
Well, we will look into it.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you identify which house you are? Because I'm not understanding the
I'm the
concern.
second house. I'm on the east side, second house from the intersection
So, right.
on it going south. So I would have to make a turn, essentially make a turn onto Montclair, make another turn onto Mackland, and then make a turn back into back onto Montclair going south to get in. Coming from the east.
Well, what we'll do is we can look at the volumes at this intersection, and look at the moving the stop sign on the other one to see if that would be warranted.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like that would be a less expensive intervention. And then if it works, everything's great. If it doesn't, put the traffic circle in and I'll drive over it. Thank you for entertaining my complaint.
Thank
I
you
really
for your
appreciate
input.
it.
Audra, these are full-size lanes for big vehicles to make the turn?
Yeah, so
No.
in design, what we do is we'll do a vehicle turning templates based on a design vehicle.
I'll let you borrow my Lexus.
And so what about vehicles like, you know, like an ambulance or,
They're not
like,
gonna make it
like-
through.
would like an F-250 or 350 have an issue making a turn here?
Yeah, we need to look into it during the design process on the size of the roundabout, but or the traffic circle, but we'll look into the volumes about switching the sign as well.
Okay, and ma'am, if you could email Audra your specific address just to make sure she's looking at the appropriate house.
Righty. Louise?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so what I'd like to talk about today is the improvements you guys are doing in at Constitution and Morningside. So one concern I have in this area is that, you know, cars, when they're approaching these pedestrian islands, it seems like they feel like it's a bottleneck. And what winds up happening is that they wind up merging into the bike lane. So one thing that I thought about, because obviously I want safe pedestrian crossing there, I support this. But one thing that I was thinking about is to prevent a car from merging into the bike lane, maybe having those plastic delineators. I looked this up before this meeting to see what they're called. Hopefully that's the name. Hopefully that makes sense to the planners. But yeah, what I found is that they're called plastic delineators. They're kind of the flexible kind. And to make sure that cars do not wind up merging into the bike lane. I use Constitution 5 days a week. I commute to UNM. That's where I work. And recently, on Girard, they put a little flexible sign there. And it's to make people aware. It's right in the middle of the street, is to let people know that there is a crosswalk there.
Mhm.
And so you know, again, I support anything that helps pedestrians cross safely, but it feels like that was at the expense of cyclists without delineators preventing cars from merging into the bike lane. Ever since that's been put up, people just they're so scared about scratching their cars, I guess, that they wind up merging into the bike lane to avoid that that signage that was posted there. I don't know if you've recently been there or seen that signage that's there, but the reason I'm talking today is because of what I witnessed there. I'm actually concerned about how motorists will react to this pedestrian crossing, this pedestrian island that's there, and Constitution and Morningside. So again, the only solution that I could come up with is having those delineators, those flexible plastic posts to prevent motorists from winding up merging into the bike lane.
Okay, so adding delineators here.
Yeah, right there, and yeah, basically every single place where motorists would go wide into the bike lane.
So is your thought just right here with the pedestrian refuges?
Yeah, so yeah, so basically, yeah, like right before the crosswalk, having, yeah, exactly, right there. Yeah, exactly. So right there, having delineators, you know, I'm not sure how far back they would have to go to make sure people see them and don't wind up going into the bike lane. But yeah, that's definitely an observation. I was actually going to write Counselor Feeblecorn about that installation over in Girard. It's Girard, I think Girard and Marble. Let me look. Yeah, I think it's Girard and Marble where that is. And yeah,
Hey, this is Tim Brown with the Traffic Engineering Division. We're the ones that actually installed that crossing at Girard and Marble, and
okay.
we were. It was kind of our first stab at a pedestrian crossing at an uncontrolled intersection like that, and so we are planning on follow-up studies both to kind of evaluate driver behavior about that. I was mostly concerned about yield compliance, whether drivers were actually yielding to pedestrians when they're crossing at that intersection.
Sure,
But
sure.
our study should also show that behavior that you're talking about. If we are getting people who are swinging wide into the bike lane to avoid that yield here to pedestrian signs, then yeah, the tubular markers that we've used elsewhere in the city will throw a couple of those up in order to kind of force them to maintain their lane. You know, the behavior that they're exhibiting is that they're nervous about hitting the sign, but they don't want to slow down to a speed that is comfortable to pass the sign and still maintain their lane. They want to maintain a higher speed, and the only way they can do that is to kind of swerve around the sign.
Right.
Obviously, our goal is to get people to drive more slowly, maintain their lane. And if that means we have to put up some extra delineators, we will. But that follow-up study should hopefully show that behavior. And like I said, I'm mostly interested in whether people are actually yielding to pedestrians. But I appreciate that comment very much.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Yeah, and I see that someone wrote on the map there, or on the picture. And I was actually thinking of also on the, I guess that would be the north side of the Constitution, also there, having those delineators. I don't know if,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. So yeah, you marked the south side. I was thinking the north side as well. So yeah, I think that's the south side, right? And then
Yeah.
on the north side, that would be, oh, actually, yeah. That would be the
Northeast.
northeast side. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And I'm assuming the bulb out there, that's the cyclists ride right through that bulb out. That's
Yes, yeah.
we can
So
ride through that.
there would be essentially like a curb cut through it, and so
Yeah.
the bicyclist could ride through it.
Okay, yeah, this is looking amazing. Like I said, I ride down here 5 days a week. I use Constitution, and I see people crossing the street all the time. They're waiting there with their dogs, ready to walk to the park. So this is really good stuff. I appreciate the work here. And
All right, thank you so much.
thank you.
All righty. And go back to the chat box. One of the chats was to confirm which park with the no parking at the entrances. And that was the hidden park here. So there's entrances, various entrances around the park. So just adding some no parking just right at those access points. Go through the chat box. There was a comment about the bike ramp. I don't know if when we were talking about it just now, if that cleared it up.
That answered the question. I thought I heard you say ramp, but curb cut totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then there was another comment about in other cities using parking curbs to protect bike lanes instead of flexible delineators. I think that's all the written comments. Yes, Martha.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So this is actually not really up your alley or in your purview. It's more of a comment for Counselor Peepercorn. It's nice to see you here, and thanks for doing this study. I live actually on the west side of Carlisle's, but I go through this neighborhood a lot. It's great to see this, but my eternal frustration is with lack of control of speeding. I mean, it's just, these are great, but you know, I watch people do incredible things here in Albuquerque. The Albuquerque drivers will always make the wrong choice. So bulb outs, they'll drive over. And I really want to strongly emphasize to the city that you've got to do something about the speed limits, because speed kills. Every time I see a report about a pedestrian hit and the police are quoted as saying, speed is not a factor. Well, yeah, it is when the speed limit is 40 miles per hour on the street. Now, most of these streets are 30 miles per hour, but if everybody's driving 5 or 10 miles over, everyone knows that you're not going to live as a pedestrian or a cyclist. Likely, if you're hit at 35 or 40, you're done for. So, I don't know. I just keep up the good work trying to slow Albuquerque drivers down, but I don't know. Maybe do something.
Thanks, Martha. I do think that that is one of the main reasons that we're doing this study and looking for alternatives here, is to do traffic calming in these areas, because folks are walking to that park, biking to work. And I can't solve the speeding problem citywide, but these kinds of interventions can calm traffic down, and that's the whole hope here. But I definitely hear your frustration and I share it.
Okay. Are there any more questions or comments? No? Oh, Patrick.
Yeah, following up on that, I was just wondering, a lot of these treatments are dealing with the intersections, which I understand are where a lot of the injuries happen. But is there any, and I guess there's the speed bumps on Avenida del Sol, but is there any look for adding mid-block speed traffic calming stuff? So like expanding the speed bumps or other things like that?
So with speed bumps, they cannot be put on any arterials, and they can't be put on emergency routes. And so that limits on, where the speed bumps can be made. On Washington Street right now, there's bulb outs already in some of the more mid-block areas. So this, adding some improvements there at Hannett and Sunningdale, hopefully that'll help introduce some additional traffic calming as people drive through Washington.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. These are intersections, but they're minor intersections, so they are mid-block.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Audrey, there is a Q&A as well.
Oh, yes. So there was a question about changing the parking lane from the east to the west side. So we didn't change the parking lane from the east side to the west side. We looked at the intersection, and that bulb out is providing some additional protection from this wall that gets hit as well. So that was one of the alternatives that we presented at the last public meeting, and so we did not move the parking change forward. Alrighty, and there's still opportunity to provide public input. So I'll put this screen back up. So questions and comments, we are having them open for a 2-week period, so September 21st. So you could email those to me. Your public input is important. These alternatives aren't set in stone, so we still like to hear from all of you, and if there's any little tweaks or comments you have on them, please feel free to email me.
And I'll just jump in and say again, I really appreciate everybody's participation. I know Audrey just said this, but I'm going to reiterate it. This is not a done deal. We are not moving forward on anything until we finish this public input process. So make sure that you send your thoughts to us if you didn't share them tonight, or if you have additional ones. Nothing will be done until we finalize that period and then issue a final report and see what, the community wants. So again, this is amazing. I'm so excited that there's so many people showing up and participating in this project. And I am really excited about some of these options. I personally think they would all be really beneficial. So thanks to Audra and her team. And please make sure you get us comments in by September 21st.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.